With over 6,000 miles of coastline and containing 90% of the UK's freshwater, Scotland is a handy place to have a boat. But what sort of boats did people use in the past? Well, one of the most ancient boat designs in human history is generally known as the Coracle. These inexpensive and easy to make boats were widely used all over the Highlands right up till the 20th century for fishing, hunting and water travel. Despite their simplicity, many hundreds of different and unique designs of coracles were created throughout the UK over the centuries. In this video, I'm joined by Charlie Quinnell, a local coracle enthusiast whose mission is to keep the knowledge on how to build these watercrafts alive. Join me as I learn about their history, how some different designs are made. Then I try for my very first time to take one out for a paddle down a stretch of a beautiful Highland river. So, stay tuned. Hi folks, Tom from Fandabi, Dozi, thanks for tuning in. So today I'm joined by Charlie Quinnell and we are going to be talking about coracles, their history and their general uses in the Scottish Highlands as well as elsewhere in the British Isles. So, thanks for joining me, Charlie.
You're very welcome.
We've been talking about this for several years and finally we've managed to actually line this up. So, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got interested in coracles.
I grew up in Sussex and I wanted a boat and I was surrounded by hazel and I decided to make one and the coracle was the obvious option. Really.
Nice.
It was quite a simple thing to put together. It's essentially a basket covered in a skin or cloth and waterproofing agent. So okay. It's very simple. But it's basically, they go back to the Stone Age and you could argue that other than flint knapping, it's probably our oldest piece of continuous tangible heritage. So they're quite important. And
I guess that's the real beauty of them, right? Is just how simple they are to make. And
they are.
Yeah.
They were very much a poor man's boat, and they were built with whatever you could find to build them with, essentially. Which is quite a handy thing. That's a lot of fun to experiment with and to build and to use as well.
So tell us a bit about the history of the coracle and run us through some of the different designs you have here.
Well, behind me is a River Conwy coracle from North Wales. This one is no longer in use. It's no longer found on its native river in North Wales, the Conwy, around Versatility and places like that. They were used up until about 1914 for two men with a slightly different knitting technique. And they're carried differently, they're built. It's a slightly different style again, very, very stable. And then there's a modern River Tav in front of me. It's a fairly new design. The old one was quite different. It had a solid wood gunnel, whereas this is very similar to what's found on the Towie in Carmarthen, which is where you find most coracle fishing now. Fishing has been largely what's kept the coracle going for, well, millennia. Net fishing in Wales, particularly now, it still goes on three rivers with nets for salmon and sea trout. But they've also been used for just crossing rivers, poaching, and in the Highlands they have been used for ferrying, and the last major use was for steering rafts of timber down the Spey in the 18th century. There's a particular coracle that you've talked about before, right? That one from the Spey. So can you tell us a bit about the story of that coracle? The Spey Currach. Yeah, it's a unique one. It's built in a completely different way to the way most of them are built. There is one in Elgin Museum, which is flat as a pancake and is we're fairly certain is the oldest coracle in the world. We also know who owned it, what it was used for, and we have a full-height portrait of him, which is quite unusual. The man was Alistair Moore na Currich, which is Big Alistair of the coracle, and he was the chief floatsman of the Laird of Grant, who was in charge of rafting the timber down the Spey. He was also the champion of Grant. That is my own design. It's fairly similar to what is most commonly found in Scotland now, which is made of hazel or willow with a woven gunnel. It's built upside down in the Irish fashion, so I differentiate. I say that's a currach rather than a coracle, but it's academic.
So that's the Gaelic word for them.
Yeah, well, currach in Irish, but the method is the difference here.
So this one here, the Irish design, the currach, so you said it was made from hazel branches?
That's right. It's just hazel in the round, and you put them in the ground as the shape of the boat, and you weave the gunnel out of willow at ground level, and then you bend the hazel over and tie it down to form the frame.
And how long would it roughly take you to build a coracle like this?
You can build one comfortably in a week, but if you want to take a bit of time over it, you know, it's not a massive job, quite a lot of fun and quite cheap.
Which I guess is what makes them so self-reliant.
You know, I mean, I've done white water in these with a cowhide.
Wow.
I did the Tay descent in 2014.
Yeah.
From Dunkeld to Perth over the rapids.
Yeah.
Performed brilliantly. Really good fun, very, very strong, and they're quite versatile things. And with a little more interest, no offence to anyone who uses kayaks or canoes, but you know, there's a bit more to them, and there's a lot of heritage involved.
Floating on your heritage.
Yeah.
These take they're a bit different to paddling your average kayak or canoe, right? So why don't you chuck it in the river and show us how it's done, and then you'll teach a complete newbie like me, and I'll give it a go.
Easier to show than tell, I think. Basically what you're doing is, for any canoeist, it's a sculling draw. You're pulling the water under the boat. Or as if you were swimming with one arm. If you had no choice, how would you move through the water? You're just manoeuvring the boat using the single paddle, which means you've got to push both ways with the one paddle. So first one side, then the other. But if you do that, surprise, surprise, what happens?
You start spinning around.
You spin round.
So you said before the one-handed technique was particularly handy if you're having to pull in nets or something like that.
Yeah, it's if you're net fishing, you've got the net in your other hand, and you paddle with one hand, you just steer yourself down the river. Time for you to ever go?
Yeah. So you just sit in the middle and get your feet in the corners.
That's it.
It's like being in a bathtub. It's quite strange. I'm very used to Canadian canoes. That's what I grew up using.
It's a very different method.
So I want to do like a J-stroke, but you're not going to be getting anywhere. So, yeah. Woo.
How does it feel, Tom?
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I mean, it is very stable. I see what you mean. I do feel safe, but sort of going against all my canoe intuition. Definitely useful for quickly crossing rivers. And how delicate is the membrane of it? Is it?
They're tougher than they look. You don't want to jump into a tree branch or a rock.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
But you know, the great thing about that is, well, with the paddle over the front, going forwards, you can feel anything under the water with the paddle.
Yeah, that's true.
Which you can't do with a canoe.
It's almost like, feeling your way.
Yeah.
So in obviously my series, I picked roughly the 17th century. Obviously, I go kind of backwards and forwards from there. But what sort of material do you think they were using in the 17th century in the Highlands? Would it be cowhide? Would it have been
cowhide, leather? It depends. You know, like I said, it's whatever you could find. So some would be using just cured cowhide. Some even just raw. I mean, if they're using them on the coast, there is a tradition, particularly in Ireland, of using them for seagoing. They're bigger, and they'd often not bother to cure it because the salt would do it.
The salt water would just cure it. Yeah.
Horsehide, seal skin, anything.
Yeah. I just love how simple it is. I mean, for this size, you would think, you know, a large cow, surely a large cow skin, that would make one coracle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are records in early Irish legal records for a currach ein shekje, which is a one skin currach, which is a river currach, essentially. So as big as one skin will allow you to build.
Yeah. That wind is so they do definitely catch the wind, don't they?
They do.
I feel like I had a rhythm earlier. So I remember you sending me some pictures, Charlie, of people actually using these as like makeshift shelters.
Yeah, you can sort of hunker down on them if you prop them up with a paddle, put them on one side and prop it up with the paddle. You can keep out of the wind and the rain in them.
Yeah.
If you put a tarpaulin over that, you've got a tent, really.
I love multifunctional stuff. I think my thoughts is definitely, yeah, pretty different to canoeing, like a canoe or a kayak that like I've done before.
Yeah.
But I love how maneuverable they are. Like I think there's certainly, I can see them being really useful for fishing, bringing in nets, even hunting within the reeds, things like that.
Watching wildlife as well.
Watching wildlife, they're just so quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just how easy they are to make. And you were telling the story as we're drifting around about a cattle raid. Can you tell that one again for the audience?
Well, there was up at Loch Moy, there's an island in the loch where the chief of Clannick-Kintarshi, the Macintoshes, had his castle, and there were loads of guys from from Loch Aber came up, as was the as was very common after cattle, and the Macintoshi was on his island thinking he was safe, but the Loch Aber men killed one of the cows, built the coracle, and paddled across to the island and attacked him. The Loch Moy story just goes to show you how quickly and easily you could build it. You could do it anywhere.
Yeah. So as long as you had some hazel coppice, maybe some willow. If you had a cow, I guess you could lash everything with just strips of the hide.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I just love how self-reliant you could say. It's a self-sufficient boat.
That's how I started. I had lots of hazel, and
want to build a boat?
I wanted a boat.
Zach, I'll build one.
Yeah, we had a stream at the bottom of our bottom of our garden, and it was perfect for that.
Yeah.
And it was just the obvious thing to do, and you just gradually worked out how to do it.
Yeah.
And then you got in touch with the Coracle Society, who have been sort of promoting coracles, running regattas and things for years.
Yeah, grand. Well, thanks so much, Charlie. That was really fun. Yeah. First time in a coracle. So, why do you think it's important to keep the tradition of the coracle alive?
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
They're just wonderful things. And I mean, just drifting down the river there just now, it's so quiet and you can feel it flex under you. And it's just, it's a feeling of connection with something extremely old.
So old. Potentially the first peoples who came to Britain were... Yeah.
Well, literally.
Yeah, they literally came on or were using these.
It was much easier. You think of the effort involved in hollowing out a dugout canoe.
With stone tools.
Compared to doing that.
Yeah.
That's testament to how old they are.
Yeah.
They're all very different. They're all beautiful. And they're ours. They're our take on the small riverboat. The Canadians have the canoe. We have this.
Yeah.
And they're just a lot of fun.
So that's really interesting. So Britain's got some. Oh, that's drifting away.
Come back here, you bugger. We mooted something at the Coracle Society to try and revive these lesser built designs. And we're trying to get funding at the moment for a project to create a series of instructional videos on YouTube showing people how to build these particular designs, getting the Men's Shed network involved, build maybe half a dozen and put them back on the local rivers.
Well, is there anywhere where folks can find out more about that particular project?
Well, there's the Coracle Society. There's a Facebook group called Coracle Users Group.
Coracle Users?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Coracle's Anonymous.
Well, I'll put any relevant links below, folks. It's definitely a tradition of building that we need to keep alive. It's something that, if you've got the materials, you could build over a weekend with a few folks.
Yeah.
Really fun wee project. So yeah, I'll put all the links below. Thanks so much, Charlie.
Thank you, Tom.
It's been great fun.